Welcome to the lecture on the international trade and open economy macroeconomics. Although we will also see, within this the trade chapter, we will also see micro parts of this open economy. But our major, the way we study open economy in general will be through macroeconomics. Well, I should say that up to this point, and mostly in economics, economies are taken as closed economics, and closed economies mean that we are taking a country, for example, United States or Turkey, or for example, China, and we assume that the country is not interacting with the other countries in any way, basically. In case of open economy, we assume our main unit, which is the country we are talking of, is interacting with the rest of the world, but our focus unit is still that country. I mean, we don't study the whole world economy in a systematic way. We rather focus on a country still, and we see the effect of rest of the world on that country mostly. In some cases, we take two country models, assuming as if there are two countries in the world. Okay, our first video is on Euro crisis, which is an interesting case because we have an entity, EU, which is in some ways acts like a country, but in some ways also is a union where the countries, union of different countries with extensive interaction of economic activity, and these two contradictions are actually these two contradictory sides of EU, and the different countries' assumption on finding a right balance between them is something that is making EU actually fragile to some extent. For example, to some extent, the countries should help each other economically and responsible from each other's economy. To some extent, we can talk on an overall mechanism to regulate economy and improve the economic conditions in whole EU. To some extent, those responsibilities belong to the countries, are part of the dispute in EU, especially in countries like Germany, which are relatively more developed and standing alone, they are able to do better off average EU countries, and countries like Greece, which are relatively worse off in terms of economic conditions, and standing alone outside of EU, they won't be able to do as well as countries like Germany. Okay, you can watch the video and you can think about that case yourself. I'm leaving it to you. Okay, I assume you have watched the video, or you decide to skip it. Now we can continue. We have already talked on the basic definition of open economy. The interactions, the three interactions that exist between the countries economically are, if we define it, of course we can divide them into further type of interactions, but the mobility of goods and sometimes services. Services don't move, of course. I mean, a bus service might not necessarily move from one country to another country. But, for example, answering phones for a company is a service, basically. It's not a good. It's not something you can produce solidly and sell to another country. But sometimes companies in developed countries might buy services like phone answering from foreign countries and buy and basically use those services. And similarly, from the internet you can buy certain services like music or movies although they are not strictly services. Well, for example, I mean, the one service you can buy is certainly education. Actually, I have discussed the degree education can be bought from internet, because if you buy a video lecture, that's in that case you are buying education material, not education itself. Education should be, I mean, guide you also how to use the material and guide you through the education, the process while you are learning this course or other courses. But you can also buy education. Actually, you can buy internet instructors that might be guiding you through the education process through internet. So this is a service you can buy from another country, and we might think of other services also. But so mobility of goods and services is one type of mobility. Another type of mobility is the mobility of capital. This means actually the foreign countries are making investments in other countries. One type of investment is actually direct investment, in which you go to the country and open a factory, a hotel, a restaurant, even basically a bureau. Even that can be counted as a direct investment by itself. Of course, that bureau might be basically dealing with the financial investments, basically. And actual investments in huge bulk might be done by that company in financial form, but the construction of that bureau or purchase of the building, even if it was built by someone else for another purpose, is still direct investment, basically. Monetary investment is basically you just use your money, you just bring your money into that country. You don't directly build, open, or rent facilities in that country, or buy inputs of production in that country. Third type of interaction is mobility of workers, which is least studied one, unfortunately, but it's an increasing phenomenon in the world, and basically I think there should be more on this, but unfortunately there is no one accepted central theory on the international labor mobility considered important enough to being taught in this course. So this is a part I will skip, basically. So on trade, what can we tell on the trade? Basically, we can tell that the Adam Smith and Ricardo, the two earliest economists, were pretty much pro-trade, who argue basically first Adam Smith argues that trade allows countries to specialize in production of certain products. As a result, they can concentrate on learning, producing that product in a better way. Also divide that production process into different tasks, and as a result, each person might be responsible for a simple task, and production can be faster. So basically, trade increases productivity and production level in a country. That's why it is beneficial, according to Adam Smith. For Ricardo, it is also beneficial because countries have advantages. They are relatively more productive in producing certain goods and services. Trade allows them to concentrate in production of goods and services, in production of which they are better off, and as a result, each country can concentrate on producing what they produce best, and as a result, I mean the total productivity in all sectors will increase, because glasses are produced in countries which produce glasses faster and more efficient. I don't know, coffee produced in places where coffee production is fastest and more efficient. And in those countries, everyone focuses on that production. They don't produce anything else, any other good in production of which they are less efficient. So production level in the whole globe increases, and when those goods are traded with each other, all countries are better off. Well, while the pro-trade views were always in place, actually, even before Adam Smith, there were also arguments against the free trade, and one of them is basically the most famous ones in the 18th century were basically Adam Smith, mercantilists in mid 18th century. Well, later also one of the peers of David Ricardo, the Malthus, has spoken against the international trade and argued there should be some restrictions, and for him those restrictions should be put in place because the country should not be dependent, especially on imports of critical products like grain, for example, because there could be war, there could be certain restrictions, and basically make sure that certain critical products are produced within that country at sufficient level, basically. And the later, actually, the mercantilist idea was recreated in 19th century in USA and Germany, and in mid-20th century in Latin America and East Asia. And main idea that was actually put into the argument and to develop it further was the infant industry idea, the idea that you need to, basically production is more efficient when you produce more of a good, but when certain companies already dominate the world, the British industrial, let's say, companies, that operate factories, since they sell all the world. When in USA a factory is opened, it can't be as efficient as the British factory because initially it won't be able to get that large of a market. So the solution is close the USA to the international trade, at least for certain goods, so that industrial base for production of these goods can develop in the United States. Germany, Latin America, and East Asia have also followed the same logic. Although in Latin America, in USA and Germany, this logic has been, this type of policies have been successful. In East Asia also, they have been, we can say, successful. In Latin America, they had mixed success, and sometimes East Asia is thought as a relatively more successful region, because in those countries, when they close boundaries and basically start to support certain industries, they also give the support conditional. Those companies had to start exporting their goods after a certain period. So that they force the countries to be competitive at the global scale, while for a while they are protecting them from international competition. So in Latin America, this was not the case, which may make those companies in Latin America, they might be comfortable because they were owning the national markets, and basically, as long as national markets were close to the foreign competition, they did not need, according to some arguments, some economists, they didn't need to make any further innovation anyway, because they are anyway protected by the state regulations. The main question is usually what country produces matters, which means actually, the countries that don't have industrial base might actually focus on producing inputs like agricultural products and the mining products, while so those countries might be basically specialized in being unproductive or underdeveloped, basically. That's the basic logic behind it. So you should rather be able to produce critical product, industrial product, for which you need to make first investments. Your country's initial natural resources are not enough to get that, let's say, efficiency, basically.